Hello everyone, I'm Krasi, and I'm planning to speak about omens, especially about the ancient astrological omens and how to make use of them in our contemporary reality. This will be a first video, maybe more introductory in relation to omens, because this is such a huge subject that I'm planning to make like series, and not only one video can finalize this very interesting subject. Now, what are the omens? The omens are events or phenomena which occur in our everyday life and which we consider to have predictive value. Like, for example, you will see that a cat is passing your road when you're walking, and a cat is passing the street, and then you will, if the cat is black, you will say that your day will be unlucky, for example. At least this is known to be ominous in my culture. Now, these are these everyday omens which we consider ominous or not. Some people can say these are just simply superstitions. Now, the astronomical omens are something very different. They also can have negative or positive character, of course. They will predict positive or negative outcome of the events, but they are really purely scientific. They're based on calculations. They're based not on superstition. They're based on astronomical calculations. For example, when there is a deviation in the path of one star, when there is a difference in the heliacal appearance in a star, then this will have certain ominous, good or bad value, predictive value. The ancient astrology, especially ancient Babylonian astrology, is astrology of divination, and it was of course hermetic, because the roots of astrology, if we look at the very ancient cuneiform tablets of Babylon, like the translated cuneiform tablets that we have, which point that astrology is dated 5500 BC, and it came through illumination of the king Enmeduranki, who is the first Hermes. Out of the three known to us incarnations on earth of Hermes, there could be more. So astrology is a knowledge of divination. It is a knowledge, it is purely astronomical calculative knowledge. So what is this to say? It is to say that every event first occurs on the sky, and after that has its manifestation, implication on earth. In such way, the Hermetic astrology works. In such way, the ominous phenomena also work and are analyzed, and interpretation of them is made before in Babylon and also nowadays. So nothing is changed, actually. Even the time has the way we measure time is not having any particular implication here. However, it is astrology of divination. Events happen first on the sky, and then they have immediately their manifestation on earth. So this is how we look also at the ominous phenomena. Now, which are the most, it was also very interesting to tell you that in the time of Babylon, which was times before Christ, of course, the times before Christ, so we know that people would, of course, look not only at the celestial omens, but also everything was considered omen. They, for example, would have their houses, which would be covered with this mud, which they would take from the rivers Tigris and Euphrates, which was like mud, and this material that they used to make the cuneiform tablets, and they would dry it on the sun. So this material, like mud, which they would take from the rivers, they would use to cover their houses with. And then when people would walk and they would visit someone, and then they would see the house, this particular mat which is covering the house, when he would see particular cracks, and then he would read the cracks, and he would read some ominous signs. Now, of course, when we're searching for signs, they're given by nature. But the astrological omen is something very different. As I told you, they have purely scientific characteristics because they have to do with the different attitude of the stars and the planets in the sky. And I will give you an interesting story of ominous phenomenon now. Before I continue with particular examples, to tell you which are the most interesting instances and literature on the cuneiform tablets which we use in now, these are the Enuma, Anu, and Liu so-called series of clay tablets which have registered omens, which were made during the time of the King Sargon the Great. This was made approximately 2300 BC, and like you can see, they're 5,000 years old. These tablets contain series of approximately, I think, 7,000 omens. Not all of them are astronomical and astrological. The Babylonians tend to register and create diaries out of everything. They would have diaries for beer. They would have diaries for actually for the stock. They would have diaries for meteorological phenomenon. They would have astronomical diaries, of course. They would simply keep diaries on almost everything. They would even have, of course, this is known, laws written, like, you know, the Hammurabi famous laws, which are also registered. They would really keep strict diaries of every single thing that they would use in their daily activities. And this is interesting because not everyone was able to write in Babylon. They would have scribes, and these people would be highly educated. And I can tell you how almost impossibly difficult is the Babylonian, the Akkadian or Old Babylonian writing cuneiform system. It's amazingly difficult. So not everyone would be able to write. They would have these scribes, which the rich people would hire, and they would make the diaries and the list. However, in the kingdom of the Sargon the Great, which is roughly 2300 BC, he was great astronomer and astrologer, and he ordered his scholars to create the so-called Anuma, Dingir, and Liu, or Anuma, Anu, and Liu series of ominous texts. And there, most of them, a big part of them, have to do with eclipses, also the ominous phenomenon associated with the heliacal phases of Venus, also Jupiter, but not all of them, as I told you, were astronomical. Even funny, I can tell you, it's not part of this particular ominous text, but they would have sexual omens. But this is something which would be, they would analyze how the man would approach the woman, and then based on this, they would derive facts that may occur in the future or not. So, of course, their civilization was very much attracted or very much engaged into omens, all kinds of omens. So Sargon the Great, he had team of scholars, and in his temple there were so-called ziggurat. This was like high temple in the middle of the kingdom, and they would watch the sky. They would register what is happening on the sky. They would register the eclipses, and they would create the astronomical diaries. And based on these diaries, later on, they would see which events that are happening on the sky are ominous or not. Then they would also create measures, which oftentimes would be rituals, and they would know which events would be bad for the king or not. So as you can see, the main concern was the future and the well-being of the king. And himself, Sargon the Great, was amazing astrologer. And yes, so for example, you can imagine if you take the very important royal star Regulus, which is in the 6th degree sidereal Leo, and you can imagine that there will be the first appearance of Mars. Like Mars, they would not look just simply at Mars, who is passing through the constellation of Leo, they would look at the heliacal rises and setting of the planets. What is this to say? This is to say that the planet is having, like a star is having heliacal cycle. And this cycle is such that a planet is having symbolical path. A planet is approaching, or a star, of course, but a planet is approaching the sun and is becoming invisible for a certain period of time. And this is associated symbolically with the death of this planet. And then after a certain period of time, the planet is having the heliacal rise, which is associated with the symbolical birth. And this heliacal rise is what is very important and would be watched and analyzed closely by the astronomers of the king, and they would see how in how many degrees above the horizon, what is the magnitude and the shine and the power of the shine of the planet or the star, and in which particular degree the planet will rise heliacally. So the heliacal cycles, the heliacal rises of the planets and the stars would have this particular ominous importance and significance, and they would certainly say a lot about the events that will take place in the future and that will impact directly the life and the power of the king and the kingdom in general. Like the eclipses always contain omens, always, every eclipse. Even now the eclipses which just took place 2-3 days ago, and the eclipse in December were also contained omens. This is also what made me think of making this video, also knowing that this year 2020 we're having many eclipses, which are 6, which is quite a lot. Year with 6 eclipses is considered difficult year, and of course there will be a lot to see, a lot of omens to analyze when analyzing the eclipses. So to go back at this particular significance of the heliacal rise of Mars. So imagine Mars is a negative star, and imagine that Mars will be having his first heliacal appearance on the western horizon, say, and Mars is appearing for the first time in the star of Regulus. And you know that Regulus is the heart of the lion. This is the heart of the king. So immediately the astronomers of the king will be worried, and they would say that this would endanger either the health or the power or the throne, of course, of the king. And then they will certainly look at the other stellar combinations. Where would be the moon? What are the other aspects which are taking place on the sky? And then if they consider this ominous, they will prescribe rituals by priests. And all these rituals, again, will be related to the sky. There is no such thing as ritual or astral magic that will take place without taking into consideration what is happening on the sky, purely in scientific astronomical measures. Imagine the other way around, a case of positive omen. Imagine you having the first heliacal rise of Jupiter, and like Jupiter was for quite some time invisible, like right now Jupiter is invisible, and Jupiter will become visible now in our time on the 31st degrees of Sagittarius. And of course it is very important, and I will be looking in which particular point will be the heliacal rise of Jupiter, in which star, and what would this mean, whether there will be omen or not. So imagine a case when Jupiter is becoming visible for the first time exactly in conjunction with Regulus, the star, which is about the heart of the king, the power, the royal power. Certainly this will give longevity of the throne, this will give power and good luck to the kingdom, and so on. And certainly this will be very good news for the king. So, and this is another omen. All these are omens. Imagine a situation when we're having eclipse, and during this eclipse we're having the significance of Mars, who is the only planet visible during the eclipse. Now I will give you an example. During the eclipse which took place now, 10th of January, we would have all planets invisible. We would have Jupiter invisible, we would have Saturn invisible, we would have Ketu, we would have the Sun, and then we would have Pluto, and then the Moon was in opposition, and this was a lunar eclipse. What is very significant here, we have many invisible planets. All the planets were invisible and they were like darkened by the eclipse. On the other hand, Mars, when Mars is visible during eclipse, and for example, if he was visible as he was in his own sign of Scorpio, this is considered ominous, and certainly not in a good way, because this would bring hostilities, this could bring in danger for the throne, and so on. In any case, when malefic planet is visible and on a very powerful and significant place during eclipse, then we can easily think of some problems which this planet will bring as an omen and as a result of the planetary phase during the eclipse. The same and the other way around would be with benefic planet during the eclipse. I will tell you about very significant, very interesting contemporary omen which changed the economy of the world and which is related to Venus. But before that, we'll mention another omen which could be found in cuneiform tablets translated by many authors, especially there is one translation of it's found also in the tablets which I mentioned, Enuma, Anu, and Leo, and it is about the ominous phenomena which destroyed the last dynasty, the dynasty of Ur of Babylon, which was actually the end of Babylon. And this is celestial phenomenon, an omen, which was known by the astrologers at that time. So it was encoded. Most of them cannot be understood directly, so they are encoded, and they give multiple names to the planets and the stars. So basically, the idea behind this omen was that when Jupiter is rising heliacally, and he is the only planet who is visible at that time on the sky, and there is no wind, there will be destruction of the dynasty, and there will be famine, and there will be disaster. And this is actually the last omen which would predict the destruction of the last Babylonian dynasty of Ur. I will talk more about these omens in Babylon, and we will find link also to the events which are taking place in our era. And with this, we'll give you example of one event which took place before the big economic crisis in 2008, and which was directly related to the phases of Venus. Before going into this particular omen, I will read you translation of Pingree from, I think, 1998 about coming from Enuma, Anu, and Leo, which is about the first appearance of Venus and what is this meaning if Venus would appear as a morning star. So, in the first lunar month, which will be the first of Nisan, the first lunar month, which will be the first appearance of the lunar crescent after the moon enters the point of the vernal equinox. So then we have, if Venus would appear in this particular first lunar month, we will have peace between kings. We will have very good agriculture. Then we will have winning over the opposite army. Then this would mean rain and famine, sweet wind, good fertility of the land, difficult times for the people. And this is according to the different appearances of Venus. If Venus, while visible, enters point of stationary point in Leo, then this is good if she is a morning star. If she enters the point of Pisces, where she is exalted as an evening star, then this is good. If the other way around, as an evening star, she enters Leo, would be bad, and as a morning star, Pisces would be good. So as you can see, there are very specific considerations. So let's see the specific, this is just to give you an example of how every particular step of the way of the planets and their phases are important for predicting future events, and especially omens. So what happened in 2008? You remember in 2008, we have this very severe economic, financial world crisis, which we still suffer nowadays. How actually this started? This started with one belated heliacal appearance of Venus. At that time, the Venus was supposed to appear heliacally in her sign, and she was late for more than 10 days. And then the people who would, if at that time Babylonian astronomers would look at the sky, they would immediately say that this would be devastating for the world markets, this will create famine and disasters, and this is exactly what happened. As a result of the late heliacal appearance of Venus, immediately after that, the markets worldwide were completely in the finances. This was the start of the financial crisis, which is still valid up until today. Another very interesting thing to tell you is that Venus is having a very specific phase. Because of her arc of vision, Venus is visible even if very near the sun. So actually, even if Venus is only 1 degree away from the sun, the planet still can be visible. And now I will tell you very interesting, I will speak particularly about the omens of Venus. Maybe we'll make special videos only on this, but I will tell you something very interesting. Venus only, this is mentioned by Assyriologists, researchers who would translate, like Kugler, who would translate cuneiform texts from Akkadian, and who were astronomers. And this was one of the such researchers was Kugler, who is talking about this. And it is about the phase of Venus, that Venus can be seen also in the day. And according to the Babylonian texts, when Venus is seen in the day, the women will leave their husbands. So what is happening? Is this actually true? Actually, this is a fact. Venus can be seen in the day only one time in her 8-year cycle. And this is happening when the Earth is in perihelion, and when the sun is in its lowest point, the point of the winter solstice. Then we're able to see Venus while culminating in the day. Culminating means to be in a very high position in the day. But this is happening only one time per 8 years, and I think this was the fact in the winter of 2000, then 2000, usually in the winter for the northern hemisphere, because of the fact that the sun needs to be in its lowest point, which will be while the sun is in the point of the winter solstice, which is approximately November, December. So when this is happening, the Venus can be seen only one time in her 8-year cycle in the day while she's culminating high in the sky, because then also the Earth will be in perihelion and will not be endangering the vision of Venus. So what is happening is that it was in 2000, then in 2008, 2016, and then you can calculate when the next appearance of Venus in the day will be. But we need to be watching, and then we can see where exactly Venus will be visible, conjoined with which star, and we will be able maybe to derive our own omens, positive or negative. So the most important thing when deriving omens is to really observe the sky, observe how the celestial phenomenon result, in what events they result in our reality. So if this is interesting for you, I will make series of ominous videos when I will be looking at planet per planet and maybe celestial event per celestial event, and this could be something very interesting. Yes, so this is about the omens of Babylon, and nothing is changed. Nothing is changed in the way we should look at such phenomena. And as you can see, they have strictly scientific value. They are not only result of our superstitious minds, certainly not, though there are omens which are result of people's superstitions, and this doesn't mean that they don't work, and it doesn't mean that they're not true, because when we're looking for science, the universe is giving us the signs. Thank you for your attention. Your comments are very welcome.